Well, for many men, working out helps get the perfect physique. But for some, hitting the weights can be an obsession. Bigorexia is a disorder where the person becomes preoccupied with muscle development. Now, we hit the streets to ask some men about their workout habits.
Have you heard of bigorexia?
Bigorexia, yeah, it's quite common in the fitness industry. We call it musclerexia, and yeah, where they think they're losing too much weight and they're always referring to themselves as small, and everyone else seems to think these guys are massive. So yeah, it definitely does exist.
Generally, how many hours do you work out?
Well, currently we're getting ready for a competition, so we'll be training at least twice a day, an hour at a time, mixing it up between cardio and weight training.
There is a lot of big guys that still think they're small in this gym. In saying that, there's a lot of bodybuilders out there that I've seen that are really big, especially for their size, like 5'11", 5'10", and they're weighing up at 130 kilos. They look like just fridges.
How often do you work out?
I work out 3 times a week, roughly. I'm always getting in some kind of exercise, whether running, cycling. The kind of muscle dysmorphia and bigorexia in young males, especially who idolise footy players and want to just eat protein and chicken and eggs the whole time.
Wow, well, how common is bigorexia and can it be dangerous? Clinical psychologist and bigorexia researcher Stuart Murray joins us now. Good morning to you.
Good morning. That'd look good on your business card, bigorexia
researcher. Is this a common condition for men?
It's certainly increasing in prevalence, and just on that note, I think it's important to point out that it can occur in females as well. It's certainly much more rare. But women can be affected as well. Yeah, it's really rare. But in terms of the prevalence, it is definitely increasing. But it's difficult to know exactly how common it is because we don't really know exactly what it is exactly. But I think sort of conservative estimates would be between sort of 0.3 and 0.5% of the population. But I think crucially, the number of those afflicted by some symptoms, but not all of them, so they do have their lives impacted, is substantially bigger and could be sort of upwards of 500,000 people, I think.
Wow. Yeah. So what is the line between being healthy and wanting to exercise regularly for it and becoming an obsession?
$1 million question, I think. The line's generally drawn along the grounds of the amount of impairment and distress caused to the individual. So I think going to the gym is ultimately a healthy pursuit. If there's a significant amount of distress and sort of impairment to normal functioning, and examples I can think of where people have sort of quit their jobs as professional jobs so they can work out and sort of set their alarm in the middle of the night so they can wake up and have protein shakes and things like that. That's clearly distressing for that person, so we'd say that's more sort of towards the extreme end.
Okay.
Can it be dangerous? I mean, we spend a lot of time talking about obesity problems. So can over-exercising and building up too many muscles be dangerous?
I think this disorder can be dangerous in terms of quality of life, certainly. So people have to...
But not physically. So if it's just impacting on their life, that's something they can live with, but it's not physically harmful?
Physically, I think it can, and that's a general misnomer about it as well. And these guys, they look often very healthy, but they can be sort of nutritionally deficient as well. These guys sort of gear their food intake just around protein, so they can become quite deficient in sort of the necessary fats and carbohydrates. And also there's a massive health risk with steroid abuse, which is a general feature of this disorder as well.
Yeah, well, when you start popping pills, that's certainly going over the line, isn't it?
Yeah.
What are some of the extremes? You were telling us people wake up in the middle of the night for protein shakes. What other things have you seen?
It can get pretty extreme when it's full on. I've seen cases where people sort of have injuries and they refuse to stop training. So I've seen people train with broken arms because they're so sort of anxious about not training and losing size that they would train and lift heavy weights with broken arms, so their injuries get a lot worse. And I think one of the most extreme features, as you can see on the screen here, is what they call synthol abuse. It's a relatively recent fad, but it's just an oil that basically they inject into the side of the muscle and sits underneath the skin, but on top of the muscle, and it's not functionally beneficial at all. They can't lift any heavier weights, but it looks massive, as you can see.
What do you do? I mean, I don't know, who steps in and says to these guys, because you wouldn't be really game, would you?
A brave
cut
person,
back a bit, or what do you do? I mean, who looks out for them? Is it the gym has to monitor and say, OK, buddy, maybe you're doing too much, or their partners, or, I mean, you know, mum's probably relinquished control a long time ago. I don't know. What do you do?
I think at the gym, quite often these behaviours are kind of reinforced and sort of normalised because they often sort of belong to a gym where there's no pain, no gain, and you need to sacrifice to be big. And so important parts of lives get sort of minimised, and I think people often sort of get depressed and get quite anxious and quite shameful, and that's sort of the trigger to this being recognised, and they kind of overlook the pursuit of this massive body.
So you need a friend or someone to step in and say, you know what, that's
quite often it's partners and family who look out for them, yeah.
And they're usually the grunters in the gym, aren't they? The ones that, the big noise, and then clang down, and then sort of you go, ooh. I'm glad there's no sand in my gym. You feel like, you know, they're going to kick it in your face. It is weird to see that, and they all congregate together, don't they? And sort of egg each other on. And anyhow.
Obviously going to the wrong gym or the right gym either way. Stuart, lovely to meet you. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
Appreciate it.
It's amazing, isn't it?